Recently, the Roblox tower defense game landscape has been really dry. There hasn't been many new tower defense games to play, and even when there is a new game to play, it's usually pretty unoriginal and derivative of much more successful Roblox tower defense games like TDX or TDS. Trying to find a new Roblox tower defense game that's actually unique in this current era of Roblox is pretty difficult, and you're going to have to do a lot of scrolling. But there's this one game I was told about recently that completely broke my expectations. It was honestly one of the best tower defense games I've played in a while, and it's only in its first demo phase, and that game is called Galactica Frontiers Tower Defense. Since we are still desperately waiting for the Nightmare Mode update in TDX, I figured in the meantime I would talk about underrated Roblox tower defense games that you should play, and this game is truly something special. As you can tell, this game is a spiritual sequel to Tower Galactica, which is another Roblox tower defense game known for its unique gameplay and story-based campaign. Tower Galactica was probably my favorite tower defense game at the time that I played it because of how unique it was compared to every other tower defense game. The game was organized in a campaign rather than being organized by game modes like how most other Roblox tower defense games are. How you had to upgrade your towers was very different as well. Instead of the traditional upgrade system where you buy an upgrade and it gives your tower several stat boosts like range, damage, and a higher fire rate, Tower Galactica had an upgrade system where you upgrade a tower's individual stats rather than buying large upgrades that gave a tower multiple stats at once. You also had to upgrade the tower's tier to be able to keep upgrading its individual stats. Tower Galactica also introduced enemies that attack you rather than your towers. A lot of people complain about tower defense games not having enough to keep you actively engaged, and this is a really interesting way to require more input from the player. However, Tower Galactica eventually stopped getting updates and the campaign was never truly finished, which obviously caused the game to slowly die out. Thankfully, the legacy of Tower Galactica has been carried on to Galactica Frontiers, and let me tell you, Galactica Frontiers does not disappoint. Galactica Frontiers is, like I said, only in its first demo phase, so there's not much to do yet, but it's really impressive how well made the lobby and the first planet are. Obviously, there are still things that need to be added and polished about these areas because the opening cutscene for Valkyria was super sped up for me, and I heard that has something to do with your frame rate cap. But overall, both of these areas are really well done and overall detailed for a demo. The lobby has a lot of small details that they didn't need to put in the game, but they did anyway. There's NPCs that you can interact with that actually have full lines of dialogue, and when you beat the first planet, Valkyria, the final boss that you defeated on that map appears captured in your ship and you can actually talk to him. And all of this really makes you feel like this is a real place you're in and not just some random lobby that allows you to teleport to the actual game, which is something that I love. The actual planet of Valkyria is a really good starting level, and this should be the example for any new Roblox tower defense game on how to make a good level or game mode for beginners. Most Roblox tower defense games have a very large flaw, and that flaw is that the early modes or levels are very boring and don't really feature the game's main mechanics. For example, in TDX, easy mode is possibly one of the most boring experiences you'll ever have in the game because not only are the enemies very similar to one another, but there's also no tower def at all, and that's kind of TDX's main mechanic. Galactica Frontiers, on the other hand, almost instantly introduces you to the mechanic of the enemies attacking you instead of your towers or the base. Handlers are a really cool enemy type that have this large robotic arm that can either hit other enemies around it to boost them forward on the path, or it can shoot a fireball that does damage to you. This fireball attack that they have is pretty easy to dodge on its own, but when you're trying to focus on other things like upgrading your towers and aren't paying attention to them, they can easily land a hit on you. It's such a simple concept, but it's so much fun to play against, and it actually forces you to focus on what you're doing. And what makes this game unique keeps on coming, because then on wave 15 you fight Zelo in his giant mech. I really like this game's sense of humor because this mech is really unserious and the theme that's playing while you're fighting it is oh so funny, but the gameplay of the boss itself is actually still good while being comedic. The boss is almost constantly shooting out projectiles seemingly randomly, and occasionally it will shoot out very large fireballs at you, which will require you to jump out of the way of them due to how large and fast they are. This boss can also stun your towers and spawn enemies from itself. You might be wondering why I didn't bring up the second planet, Airgis, and that's because this is more of a joke planet because it isn't finished. The entire planet is covered in pancakes, and the enemies are either reused from Valkyria, taken right out of Tower Galactica, or completely made up like the Pan Tank, which has some of the worst sound design I've ever heard. All in all, Galactica Frontiers is a really good tower defense game, especially for being in its first demo phase. The game does a really good job at recreating Tower Galactica's unique mechanics, and even improving upon them. Tower Galactica had an issue with the early planets being very boring, and not featuring a lot of the game's interesting mechanics, but Galactica Frontiers does a very good job at introducing you to the game's core mechanics very early on. The lobby and Valkyria are very well detailed, and they greatly add on to the game's world building. Galactica Frontiers is a really underrated game, and you, yes, you watching this video, should play it. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.
Show!